Chapter 51. Stephen's newly opened hotel is in the development zone of Aurus Hill City. The development zone is far away from the urban area, and the land is large and sparsely populated. Charlie was a little wondering why Stephen chose to open the hotel here. However, I heard from Claire that several large manufacturing enterprises have settled in the development zone recently, including large companies such as Foxconn, which will soon become functional. So Stephen is actually very wise to open the restaurant here now. Stephen's restaurant, on the edge of a wide new street, seems to be quite large, with 2 floors above and below. The name of the restaurant is Uli Restaurant, and it seems to have some artistic conception. When Charlie drove the car to the door of the hotel, there was already a row of cars parked at the door, and several people were standing in front of a golden BMW car smoking and chatting. Charlie knew these people. They were all classmates in the previous university, but these people had no friendship with him. The person headed by Charlie still remembered that his name was Gerald White, who was a relatively famous second-generation rich in his class at the time. He had always thought about Claire, but Claire didn't look at him all. At this time, Gerald leaned against the golden BMW car and accepted compliments from his classmates. Several male classmates commented on his newly bought BMW sedan and exclaimed, "Brother Gerald, you are really a winner in life. You are driving such an expensive car, nevertheless, you have just graduated. BMW. It seems to be the BMW 540, right? The top 5 series?" Gerald laughed and said, "Oh, 540, it's nothing more than 700,000 or 800,000 only. I wipe it. 540? This is the most expensive imported car in the 5 series. Hey, I want to buy a 200,000 BMW 1 series, but I don't even make up the down payment. It's far worse than taking off. Brother Gerald, your car must be very powerful, right?" Gerald smiled and said, "Fortunately, it's okay. The pick is relatively strong. Generally, you can't meet an opponent on the street. It's awesome. If only I could have a BMW car. My girlfriend thinks that I can't afford a car, and this is so annoying." At this time, someone with sharp eyes saw another BMW coming and said in surprise, "Oh, is this BMW also of one of our classmates? Oh, my grass. Isn't this Charlie's the smelly rug? It looks like Claire is sitting in the co-pilot. D*MN, this guy who eats leftovers is also driving a BMW. It must be Claire's right." Gerald also saw Charlie in the car and said with a gloomy expression, "It turns out to be this rubbish. D*MN, he is really lucky." At this time someone asked, "Hey, which series of BMW is he driving?" At this time, Charlie drove the car nearby, then reversed and parked into the parking space. Gerald glanced at the 520 on the tail label, and suddenly smiled contemptuously. Cut, 520, the lowest beggar version of the 5 series, only a swollen face. Anyone can afford this model. The person next to him immediately nodded and said, "Brother Gerald, you have the top 5 series, he has the cheapest 5 series, is it a lot worse than yours?" Gerald snorted coldly, "I can buy them both. Brother Gerald is awesome." At this time, Charlie stopped the car, and Claire and Elsa walked off first. A few boys immediately looked straight and greeted them in a swarm. "Oh, 2 golden flowers in our class are here together." Chapter 52. Claire and Elsa greeted everyone politely. Gerald looked at Claire, who is now more beautiful and moving, and his heart was extremely unbalanced. D*MN, why? When he was in college, he desperately pursued Claire, but she simply ignored him. Now, she is actually married to a live-in son-in-law and a waste who eats leftovers. God is really blind. Thinking of this, he sneered, "Oh, Charlie, your treatment seems to be very good when you join Claire's house. You are all in a BMW. Has Claire bought it? You really got a shortcut in this life. You are a role model." Claire's expression was a little unhappy when she heard this. Elsa at the side immediately said, "Gerald, you are mistaken, this car is not bought by Claire, it was bought by Charlie himself." Oh. Gerald curled his lips. Awesome, are all in the BMW 5 Series. After finishing speaking, he deliberately provokes Charlie. I say, Charlie, there are no cars in the development zone, and the entrance avenue is wide and straight. How about we two drive up faster than the other? Charlie frowned, looking at Gerald's heart a little sulking. What can he do to trouble me? I have no friendship with him. Besides, whose car is faster than me? I am a BMW 760, the most expensive and fastest BMW model. Compared, it seems that I am bullying a child. Gerald thought he was scared. Immediately sneered. Oh, I said, Charlie, why are you still the same as when you were in college? What are you afraid of? Are you reluctant to bear the petrol charges? It's not a big deal, I'll just add a tank of gas for you. Elsa protested with some dissatisfaction. Hey, Gerald, what do you mean? Your car is a BMW 540, and Charlie's is a 520. The power is different from several grades. Does it run faster than anyone else? Do you think it's fair? Gerald shrugged his shoulders. The car mainly depends on the technology. A good car does not necessarily mean running fast, but also depends on the technology and courage. I don't know if Charlie has the courage to compete, then forget it. Anyway, Charlie has never been on the stage, everyone knows. Several people next to him immediately agreed. That's right, just say it if you're afraid, not ashamed. Charlie didn't get angry and laughed and said, Gerald, there is no comparison, but we can't just compare with the mouth. It's better to just nod, or it's more boring? Okay. Gerald was worried that Charlie was not fooled. Suddenly he heard that he mentioned it himself. He immediately believed that he was dying, and blurted out, well, if anyone loses, he will kneel on the ground and kowtow to the other party. What do you think? Charlie shook his head. It's all grown-ups, don't play childishly. At this time, Stephen, wearing a suit, walked out with a large plate of firecrackers, and when he saw Charlie coming, he immediately stepped forward and said excitedly, Oh, Charlie, you are here. Charlie nodded, smiled at him, and said, Congratulations on the opening of your new store, Stephen. Stephen smiled and said, Thank you, brother. Gerald said coldly at this time, Charlie, don't change the subject, tell me, what color do you think is appropriate? Stephen asked curiously, What's wrong? What are you doing? Charlie smiled slightly, looked at the large plate of firecrackers in his arms, and asked him, Stephen, how loud are your firecrackers? 30,000 ringing. Stephen smiled. This cannon is not cheap, it is red all over the floor, more than 600. Charlie nodded, and said to Gerald, Let's compare, and whoever loses will put this firecracker in his car to explode. What do you think? Chapter 53. When Gerald heard this, he couldn't hold back his excitement. His own car is 540, Charlie's is 520, even if he is exhausted, he cannot win. He dared to bet such a big bet with himself. 30,000 ring firecrackers are set alight in the car, and this car is also terrible. Basically, the interior, seats, and console will be bombed to a mess. Since Charlie is looking for death on his own, it really gave him a good opportunity to humiliate him. Therefore, Gerald nodded almost without hesitation and shouted, Everyone is a testimony. I and Charlie will compete for the fastest car. If I lose, I put this firecracker in the car and lighted it. After speaking, he said, If anyone repents and shame, the whole family will die. A few male classmates next to him immediately began to make a fuss. The classmates upstairs heard that there was such a thing, and they all rushed out. 20 or 30 people gathered around the door waiting for a good show. Does everyone think Charlie is a fool? 520 dares to challenge 540. These are all straight roads. Whose car drives fast has little to do with technology and depends entirely on the performance of the car. A 520, even if it is driven by Schumacher, it is impossible to exceed the 540. It seems that Charlie's brand new BMW 520 will soon be declared scrapped. Claire also kept advising Charlie, saying, Charlie, don't be agitated by him, he deliberately do this, don't compete with him. Charlie smiled slightly. Don't worry, wife, your husband will never lose. Gerald laughed loudly. Oh, Charlie, don't say anything else, I admire your courage. Ha ha ha, in this case, let's stop talking nonsense and just drive and compare. Okay. Charlie nodded and asked him, how do you compare? Gerald pointed to the intersection at the end of the road and said, let's start at the same time and see who gets to that intersection first and then turns around. Once we go, whoever returns first will win. What do you think? Charlie smiled and said, no problem. Okay. Gerald said excitedly, everyone is a testimony, we will start the game right away. With that, he got into his BMW 540 and drove onto the road. Regardless of Claire's obstruction, Charlie drove the car to Gerald's side, the fronts of the two cars aligned. At this time, a good guy smiled, I'll count down to you. Okay. Gerald smiled, start when you are ready. Charlie nodded and turned on the sports model of his BMW 760. The BMW 760 uses a 6.6-litre displacement and 585 horsepower engine. The next BMW 540 uses a 3.0-litre displacement and 340 horsepower engine. The displacement is twice as small as the 760 and the power is 245 horsepower. It can be said to be a world of difference. However, how did Gerald know that Charlie's 520 is actually a top 760? He thought he had a chance to win. The student in charge of the countdown shouted excitedly, prepare. 3, 2, 1. As soon as the voice fell, Gerald immediately stepped on the accelerator pedal. He knew that Charlie was determined to lose, but he wanted to make Charlie's loss even more ugly. So, try to run faster. However, what he didn't expect was that on his right hand, a black shadow quickly rushed out and instantly left him behind and far away. It's Charlie's BMW 520. Gerald could hardly believe his eyes. Oh sure, how can that be? This is never possible. Chapter 54. His BMW 520 has only 184 horsepower, while his own car has 340 horsepower, which is near twice as high. How can he overtake him so easily? The classmates watching the excitement are also dumbfounded. No one thought that Charlie, who everyone thought was bound to lose, turned out to be like an arrow from the string, instantly surpassing Gerald and suddenly leaving him far behind. Before Gerald ran halfway, Charlie had already turned around at the end of the road. When Gerald was about to turn around, Charlie had already driven the car back to the starting point. Charlie won. And won with a crushing advantage. Gerald just turned around and came back, and saw that Charlie had reached the end, his whole body almost collapsed. What happened? What the H*LL is going on? When did the BMW 520 become double the BMW 540? Wrong. This B at start must have modified his car. Oh sure, Take a modified car to pit me? D*M it. He gritted his teeth and drove the car back in front of everyone. Charlie was already clapping with Claire to celebrate the victory. The surrounding students were all dumbfounded, and until now they couldn't figure out why Charlie's 520 was so fast. Gerald stopped the car and walked out angrily and roared, D*MN, Charlie. You drove a modified car, right? This is not a round. The modified car has so much power than mine, how can it be compared? Charlie sneered and said, Hey, Gerald, just now you said that motivation is more important, technology and courage are not. Now if you lose, you will be shameful? I didn't. Gerald's expression flashed a little panic, and he said arrogantly, You cheated me. Elsa said contemptuously, Gerald, you are nothing but words, it is really disgusting. Don't forget the poisonous oath you just made, if anyone does not want to bet and lose, the whole family will die. Yes. Many of the classmates who were waiting to see Charlie's jokes are now dissatisfied with Gerald. They can see that this person really can't afford to lose, such a big person, he is not the one who picked up things by himself. Dare to cash out. So someone opened his mouth and said, "Gerald, you are boring. Everyone has witnessed it. You have to compare yourself with Charlie. You also said that your motivation matters. If you lose, your whole family is dead. Now you have to cheat yourself. Is it obvious that the whole family would die and you will not honor the gambling contract?" "Yeah." A girl said, "Gerald, everyone used to think you are particularly masculine, and you say one thing, but we didn't expect you to be such a backlash." Others said, "I can see what Gerald is like. He is a double-standard dog. If Charlie had lost, he will definitely not let Charlie go easily. Now that he loses, he starts to play rascals. It's rubbish." Gerald's face was blue and white. To be honest, he had just bought this car for less than a month and spent more than $700,000 before and after. If you really throw 30,000 ring firecrackers and light them, then this car will be terrible. This is his own car. He usually doesn't allow any small scratches or dust to appear, so why would he be willing to throw firecrackers into it? However, with so many classmates looking at him, now that he has obviously lost the popular support, if he continues to persevere in shamelessness, then the classmates will definitely not get along with him in the future. They even will say everywhere that he had lost the gambling, and would rather carry the gambling curse that the whole family died, and would never honor the bet. Thinking of this, his heart was shaken. If you don't like the firecrackers, you will ruin your fame. At this moment, Charlie suddenly said, "Gerald, everyone is a classmate. You can't be joking. Your car is quite expensive. If you don't want to, shouldn't have a bet." Gerald breathed a sigh of relief instantly. However, the surrounding students immediately discussed, "Oh, Charlie is still big-bodied. It's really shameful to see Gerald." "Yeah." Charlie realized that he couldn't afford to lose, so he gave him a step down. Gerald's self-esteem suddenly burst, and he yelled, "Who the H*LL said I can't afford to lose? What about firecrackers? Give them to me. Since I can afford to gamble, naturally I can afford to lose." At this moment, Charlie wiped a smile on the corner of his mouth. Chapter 55. Gerald has lost his mind at this moment. He didn't want to be crushed by Charlie's rubbish in front of his classmates. So he turned his mind, took the firecrackers from Steven's hands, and threw them directly into his car. After that, he picked up the lighter, grabbed the fuse of the firecrackers, and said coldly, "You look good. Man is not someone who can't afford to lose." Not to mention Charlie's sympathy. With that said, he immediately lit the lighter. The firecrackers ignited in an instant, crackling in the car, and exploded. At first, you could still see the fire in the car, but soon, the car was full of thick white smoke, and the sound of constantly exploding firecrackers made Gerald's heart dripping with blood, but it made the classmates who watched it bustling with excitement. Many students have already started to take out their mobile phones to record videos, and plan to post the whole process to Instagram and Facebook in a while so that netizens will also take a look at this rare show operation. The 30,000 ring firecrackers exploded, and soon the seats of the BMW 540 were blown up. The seats were filled with a large number of sponges, which were all flammable items. With the help of the firecrackers, an open flame was immediately ignited. Everyone did not expect that the firecrackers would ignite the car, and the white smoke was filled with it, and it was invisible even if it caught fire. However, when the firecrackers were almost exploded and the smoke began to disperse, the flames inside suddenly burst open, and the entire compartment suddenly fell into flames. The classmates at the scene all screamed, and Gerald blurted out in shock, "D*MN, put out the fire. Put out the fire." He originally thought that a firecracker would blow up the seats and injure the interior at most, but he would spend tens of thousands, or even hundreds of thousands to repair it. However, he never expected that firecrackers would set fire to the car. He shouted for the fire extinguisher, but no one could help him put out the flames in the car empty-handed. He hurriedly dialed 119 and then watched desperately on the spot as the fire of his car grew stronger and finally fell into a sea of flames. When the fire truck came, only the burned frame of the BMW 540 was there. From the frame, you can't even tell that this was once a BMW. Gerald sat slumped on the ground, desperately watching his beloved BMW turn to ashes, and his heart was painful. If he knew this would be the case, he'd have killed himself, but wouldn't actively provoke Charlie and want to play against him. Not only did he lose his face, but he also took the car to ruin. There was no expression on Stephen's face, but he felt quite funny in his heart, and quietly gave Charlie a thumbs up. Afterward, he said to Gerald, "Gerald, don't be too sad. Time is almost up. Should we go in for dinner?" Gerald wanted to find a reason to leave directly, but after thinking about it carefully, it would be too cheap. Charlie, the B.at starred. In any case, his car was abandoned because of Charlie, so this place, I must find it back. So he stood up, pretending to be calm, and said, "What is so sad about me? I just wanted to bet." Several of his classmates also came up to agree with him. "Brother Gerald is so rich, what is a BMW?" "Yes. For him, it's just an ordinary scooter." Everyone knew that Gerald wanted to face, so he stopped mentioning this matter, and followed Stephen to prepare for the opening ceremony. In the store, several banquet tables have been set up in the lobby, and on the small stage in front, banners celebrating the reunion of classmates and the opening of the hotel are hung.